Fox News propagandist Tucker Carlson is really playing up this Fox News crisis at the border story. Of course, the crisis at the border started 3 days after Joe Biden took office. It's amazing how quickly he was able to start a crisis at the border. And Fox News has really been playing this up. And this is just a perfect red meat issue for Tucker Carlson. And last night, Tucker did a segment on his show arguing that the country suddenly is too crowded and that crowded countries are unhappy countries. Let's take a listen to Tucker Carlson.
Has there ever been an administration this reckless and destructive? What's happening on the border tonight will change this country forever. A lot of things won't. This will, and you should know that. Unlike other disasters, mass illegal immigration is permanent. No one ever really gets sent home. Over the past 30 years, the population of the United States has exploded by nearly 100 million people, mostly due to immigration. Were you even aware that that happened? You're not supposed to say a word about it, as every year the United States gets steadily more jammed with people and at the same time more chaotic and less cohesive. As the open spaces shrink, as nature itself recedes in the face of yet another strip mall or apartment complex or fast food outlet to serve the new people. This is becoming a crowded country, and crowded countries are ugly, unhappy countries. Why are we letting that happen?
So there are about 5 layers of things to talk about here. And I really hope that these segments are instructive. I think these are great because we start with just like a cartoonish or wacky thing from right-wing media, which I think interests a lot of people. But then we actually look at the data behind a lot of these things, and hopefully we come out with a better understanding of how the world works. First of all is just the political posturing and the hypocrisy. Why do this segment 56 days into Joe Biden's presidency, but you never did it during Donald Trump's presidency, given that if the issue is the country being crowded, during the time that Donald Trump was in office, the U.S. population increased by 6 to 7 million people. And Tucker said nothing about the country being too crowded. And yet, during Joe Biden's 50-something days in office, during which the U.S. population probably increased by about 100,000 people, all of a sudden now the country is just stuffed full of people. It's too crowded. The answer as to why he didn't do it then and he's doing it now is because he only cares about this issue when a Democrat is president. That's very simple. Number 2, Tucker often focuses on what he considers the tragedy of cities, which I guess he believes are sort of war zone hellscapes. But the truth is that the U.S. is large cities surrounded by gigantic areas with very few or almost no people in many states. And in fact, if you actually rank countries by overall population density, the U.S., I think this will shock many of you, the U.S. is 145th in the world in population density. We are right behind Mozambique and Venezuela and the Faroe Islands in population density, but just ahead of Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, and Estonia in population density. Yes, our population density is lower than that of the Faroe Islands. So it's also not crowded. Many cities are, but people are choosing to live there. And if it became too uncomfortable to live in those cities, there's plenty of open space that people can find. And if Tucker's looking for open space, certainly there's plenty for him as well. Now, then he gets to happiness. In terms of happiness, I have studied, in fact, my master's, here we go, my master's, not really dissertation, but one of my final master's papers was on happiness correlations. And there is no evidence that population density correlates with happiness. However, a lot of economic factors do. And people can be happy in cities or in suburbs or in rural areas, but it really depends on having a job, economic stability, social connections, access to health care, which is part of being able to sort of determine what you want to do in life. And then lastly, population growth in the United States is really slow right now. The population grew at the slowest rate in 120 years between 2019 and 2020, just 0.35%. So this is another fake scandal where Tucker and Fox and Newsmax and others, they want you to think that the immigration crisis suddenly is so bad that the country is now crowded. By no measure is the United States crowded. But then here's the additional layer of irony. The real population concern is not about, oh, it's too crowded, there's no room. The real population concern is not immigrants are flooding the country. No, it's none of that. The population concern is climate change and sustainability. The most science-based concern about, you could say world population or U.S. population, is energy consumption and resource depletion. And that's the one that Tucker doesn't actually care about. He at least doesn't talk about it. And he ridicules climate science, and he ridicules those who are concerned about resource use in the United States. And what was notably absent from that rant, a fact-free rant, a propagandistic rant, was the real concern about, listen, at a certain point, what are we doing to the natural resources of our planet? What are we doing in terms of emissions? What are we doing in terms of all of these other things if the world population continues increasing at the current pace? Now, this ignores all sorts of population dynamics and theories. You've got Thomas Malthus, and there's all this different literature about this that's out there. Certainly, it's beyond Tucker's segment. But the point is, if you want to have a real conversation about the impacts of an indefinitely increasing population, it's a climate change conversation. It's an environmentalism conversation. It's a sustainability conversation. You're not going to find that on Tucker's show anytime soon. That I can assure you. One of our sponsors is privacy.com. They're giving you $5 when you sign up for their completely free service at privacy.com/Pakman. I've been using Privacy for a little over a year now. You've heard me talk about it before. It's a lifesaver, and here's how it works. Takes just a couple of minutes to set up. Anytime you buy something online or on the phone, instead of actually using your real credit card number, the Privacy app and the browser plugin let you give each company a randomized virtual credit card number that you create out of thin air. It'll even autofill the card number with one click. And the payment is taken out of your checking account without the merchant ever knowing your real information. So this allows you to keep your banking information secure, but also to take control of your finances. You can create up to 12 of these virtual credit cards a month. You can set spending limits. You can freeze them. You can delete them anytime you want. So when you do this, it means you're not going to be charged when you don't want to be, because you can destroy the virtual card number right after using it, which, for instance, I love using free trials because I know I won't be charged when the trial is over if I use a virtual credit card number. You're keeping your identity private by not telling companies who you are. You're keeping your bank or credit card info protected against data breaches and identity theft, and it's free. And like I said, you'll get $5 to spend when you sign up at privacy.com/Pakman.